What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Works of Wisdom, the place where we provide common ground for Christians to bridge the gap between Sunday school and seminary school. And today, we've got a wonderful episode of Decoding Christianese that I'm excited to get into. So, without further ado, let's get biblical. The phrase that we'll be going over today is the world, which is not an exclusive Christianese phrase. The world is used to encompass all human pursuits having to do with sex, money, and power. These conversations are being had on several podcast spaces throughout the YouTube sphere, where we're saying things like men are able to cheat better than women because we're biologically built for it. We're saying things like men should have multiple wives or multiple partners while women should not have multiple partners. We're also saying that as a man goes through his life and increases in resources, that his value increases, while women, their only value is sexual, and as they have more sexual partners, their value decreases. And as Christians, these are not the perspectives that we ought to be taking. So where did this thought process come from? We'd have to go to Genesis 4 chapter 16. Genesis 4:16 reads, Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city, and he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mujahel, and Mujahel begot Methushel, and Methushel begot Lamech. Then Lamech took for himself two wives. The name of one was Adah, and the name of the second was Zillah. And Adah bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwelt in tents and have livestock, so farmers. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those that play the harp and the flute, musicians. And as for Zillah, she also bore Tubal Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron, so metal workers. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech, for I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77fold. So we can see this is the first city that is away from God, that's focused on people's talents, but not necessarily people's purposes and what God has put them on the earth to do. Now, where did this all start? It started from their father Cain abdicating from his purpose that God has put him on the earth to do. So let's go look at Cain. In Genesis 4, the Bible details the events of their father Cain and his brother Abel. I encourage you to read it for yourself, see what God reveals to you, read it with your friends, family. I'm going to summarize it here. So there are two brothers, they're sons of Adam, and they are both outside of the Garden of Eden. And they both have two job descriptions. Cain, his name is acquired, and he is the oldest. And what Cain is doing is he's tilling the fields where thorns and thistles are produced. And Abel, his younger brother, is a livestock. He's a shepherd. He takes care of livestock. We don't know what, but he takes care of livestock. They both make an offering. God he disregards Cain's offering, and he honors Abel's offering. Cain gets jealous. He gets upset. He calls his brother into the field. He kills his brother. God says, Cain, where's your brother? Cain abdicates from responsibility. He removes himself from responsibility. He says, how am I supposed to know where my brother is? I'm not my brother's keeper. Am I my brother's keeper? And then God says the ground is literally crying out from your brother's blood. And so then God curses Cain, an additional curse from the first one, curses Cain and exiles him. And then Cain says, well, God, this is too much. This is more than I can bear. So in God's grace, he protects Cain. He gives Cain a mark to protect him from people that might try to kill him. And then the city is born that we talked about in the beginning. So now we're going to hone in on Cain, who is a very important figure in the Bible that I think is oftentimes overlooked. I affiliate with Cain because I'm a firstborn, and this is what God revealed to me. But Cain, his name is acquired. And what did he acquire? Cain acquired the curse of his father. He's tilling the ground and is producing thorns and thistles. And of that, then there's fruit. So Cain establishes a very critical principle that somebody has to bear the curse for humanity. And we can see that throughout the rest of the Bible. But somebody's got to bear the curse of humanity. Cain's that guy. Cain is that person who's going to bear the curse for humanity. And he's doing that. He's bearing the curse, and he's holding up the weight of the curse so that his brother can walk in the image of God. His brother is ruling and dominion and having dominion over livestock, which is over life, that everything that breathes, he's having dominion over it. And so, as the foundation, Cain is setting the foundation for the rest of humanity to walk in the image of God. Now, there's much debate as to why God didn't regard his offering, but my interpretation of it, what I believe is the reason why God didn't regard it, is because it was offered in the wrong direction. So Cain's bearing the curse, and he's doing a service to mankind. That is what the curse bearer does. He serves mankind, right? So that mankind can walk in the image of God. So the fruit of that should not be offered to God, because you're serving man. So then the fruit of that should be offered to the ones that are walking in God, that are walking in the image of God. So, and you're supporting them, you're laying the foundation by bearing the curse and supporting them. And so you're essentially dying, right? That's where the death, honestly, I believe that Cain inherited Adam's death. And if Cain would have served faithfully until he died, then maybe sin would have been dealt with right then and there. And we see inklings of this because after God disregards his offering, he goes to Cain and says, like, why are you mad? Why is your countenance fall? Why is your face? Why are you looking down? Why are you sad? If you do right, won't you be rewarded? And so Cain's looking to be rewarded. He didn't answer God. He didn't answer God. But that's what God is talking about. And then God also says, like, hey, sin is crouching at your doorstep, waiting to devour you. Its desire is for you, but you got to rule over it. You got to rule over it. And so we see this tension in Cain, that God has allowed Cain to have these huge expectations. But if Cain was faithful, sin might have been done with then and there, but he wasn't. What was Cain's issue? Cain's problem is that he didn't trust God's timing. We can see from Cain that God put a gift in him and in his children that allowed him to build a society. Now, if Cain had been patient and waited on God, then the society would have been built, and it would have been a part of God's plan in ruling and subduing the earth. But because Cain wanted to seek his own recognition on his own time, on his own terms, he did something that he couldn't take back. And God cursed him. The gift was still active. They still built the society. The society was just away from God. And we still participate in building this society today when we take the gifts that God gave us and we seek recognition for ourselves. So this society that was built by Cain and his family is where we get the concept of jobs, places that people go to earn their livelihood. Jobs are where you go to work for your life. I repeat, jobs are where you go, where you work for your life. We put hours and hours of our lives into these jobs where they pay us money, and then we take that money and then we go and live our life, right? That is not God's original design. But this is the design when you have people that build a society where they're seeking their own self-interest. God's design was that Cain bears the burden of sin and allows his family, his children, to walk on the burden that he bared so that they may live. Cain, the original design for Cain, was God's purpose. Purpose is where you live through your work, or where others may live through your work. And that is a self-sacrificial model that we see later on in the series. So in this society that Cain and his family built, they were the first people to create jobs, things, occupations that are apart from God, that people who are born in this particular society must do to support their lives. And so I think this shows us exactly where our job should fall in relationship to our faith. Just like Cain should have upheld the curse so that his brother is able to walk in the image of God. Our jobs, the people that work the jobs, this is why men are supposed to be the providers, etc., because men are supposed to work, uphold the curse that we still have, so that their wives and their family are able to walk in the image of God. That's why the Bible says that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. We're supposed to be making the job of other people easier. We're supposed to be provide. If we have to already work and to provide for our family, we do that not so that we get the reward or the respect or the love. Like, we do that so that our families can walk in the image and the purpose that God has called for them. There's a reason why there's a Proverbs 31 woman, and she does all of these things, and she's honored, and she brings honor to her husband and stuff, because her husband has laid the foundation for her to walk on. These are the conversations that bring value to men and women. These are the conversations that Christians ought to be talking about, not how we have multiple wives so that they can serve me because I'm the breadwinner, etc. That's the same thing Cain said. That's the same thing that Cain did, which led him to killing his brother and starting the society that we live in right now, or the first iteration of it, the first version of it, right? As men, as Christian young men, we are to, if we do have the burden of working a job, if our fathers did not do what they were supposed to do, like Adam did not do what he was supposed to do, then as the oldest and as the sons and as the people of our family, the men of our family, we are called to bear that burden and to hold up that standard so that other people can walk in a physical sense. In a spiritual sense, we have somebody who did that for us. So God bless. You feel me? But we'll talk about that in a later video. So to summarize this video into one sentence or into one segment, the world is what happens when people that are supposed to bear the curse for others seek gratification for themselves. That is the product. And when people do that in mass, it means in large groups and large numbers, we build societies that are still cursed. Fortunately, as Christians, we're building something different. We're building something that's not cursed, but that's blessed. And that not only blesses us, but blesses the rest of humanity. And if you want to know about that kingdom, that's going to be in an upcoming video. So if you're excited about the upcoming videos, if you have watched this and become a better image of God, or you've gained some knowledge, or you've gained some questions and you'd like to discuss it, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and above all else, have a good one.